Who do these people think I am? I mean, I love that they believe in my skills.
I am actually an animator.
It's all fake. It's all AI. Hate to break it to you. April Fools.
Access denied. Access denied. Access denied.
Hey y'all, it's your host Jessica Jordan, and I'm here on Access Denied, the podcast dedicated to helping you get over your fear of rejection, one episode at a time. Let's go! Hey y'all, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Access Denied. Today, I am so freaking excited because I am joined by my friend and fellow disabled content creator, Eliza Rain. Eliza is so creative and such a great disability advocate that I knew exactly what we needed to talk about on today's episode, and I think y'all are gonna love it. We spill all of the accessibility on what it really is like to get around a big major city as wheelchair users. We also talk about what it's like to constantly have your disability called into question and be accused of faking it. This is a can't miss episode, y'all. Let's dive in. Eliza, welcome to Access Denied. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I am good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. It's sunny in Chicago, which always means I have a sunnier attitude. So
it is not sunny here. In London, it is pouring with rain.
I am so sorry. It's also evening time there, so that
it is. Yeah.
Not great. Yeah. January, cold, rainy. Sounds like London. Sounds like a bad
time. Yeah.
But thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. We've known each other now for so long, I feel like, but also like not really. Like it's only been a few years. But, I also feel like the last few years have been like the longest years of my life. I don't know if you feel that.
Yeah.
But how did we meet? It was online, right?
Yeah. I want to say it was online. Yeah, I think it was. I don't know. I'm not very good at remembering where I meet all my friends.
I'm not good at it either. I think we connected online, and I don't remember which one of us like said, let's get a coffee or let's get a lunch or something. But I do think that was ultimately what happened. So
yeah, I think we did connect online and then kind of went from there. I feel like had we already met when I like got the Harry Styles tickets, or was that, I can't even remember.
We had already met, definitely. Okay. Actually, you know what?
I don't.
This might be a very niche memory, and maybe I'm wrong with the timeline, but I think that our first like proper interaction was on the South Bank. I think you were like,
yes, no, it was.
Okay.
Yeah. We bumped into you.
Yes. That was so fun. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm glad that you also are like, yes, that's a thing that happened, and it wasn't just something that I made up in my brain.
No, that did definitely happen.
We spent time on the South Bank, so I was just like,
yeah. No, that did happen. I can't remember. Was I with Michael? I think I was, and we bumped into you. I think that's the first time we met.
I think you were with Michael, and I don't remember who I was with. It might have been my friend Robin, to be quite honest with you. I don't know. My memory is escaping me, but I think you said that you had just been at the aquarium, and yes. I kind of lived in that zone, so I was like there a lot. So I don't know why I was there.
Was it winter?
Probably, but like, isn't it winter?
It might have been like after we got engaged, because we randomly bumped into like 5 people right after we got engaged and then didn't tell anyone.
I don't like. How long was your engagement? Because I feel like I knew you before that.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It does not matter. But I know that it has been such a joy being your friend, both online and like in person. I feel like we've made some fun memories now, which is always good. Yeah. But I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners today?
Yeah, so I'm Eliza. I'm a disabled content creator. I am a white person with a blonde bob, and I'm wearing a brown shirt. And yeah, I'm a content creator, have been for the last 5 years. Oh my goodness, that's a long time. Yeah, we're coming up to 5 years. And I live in London with my 2 dogs, Pod and Pam, and my partner, spouse, Michael. And yeah, I make content about disability, but also other things like fashion, makeup, hair, clothes. Yeah, that's pretty much sums me up.
I love it. I love that you gave a visual description. I should really have other guests do that. That's like really important. So thank you for that.
No, that's
Also,
right.
loving the blonde bob.
I know. Blonde's back.
It's
Blonde.
back. Yes. What's that voice thing?
No, I know. It's back and it's fun. I know. It's been pink before and there was a bit of a like question mark about whether or not the pink would come out. And my hairdresser was like, we'll try. And it did. So that's fine.
Well, it looks excellent. I love the cut too. It's very sleek, very chic. We love to see it.
Yeah, it's like a little like an ode to Edna Mode.
At blonde Edna mode. I mean, listen, I'm a big Disney girly. I love the Incredibles. It's great. Her sass is wonderful.
Yeah.
10 out of 10. You were talking about like the different types of content you make. One thing that I want to like talk about is London. You make a lot of content about life in London, but also
Yeah.
accessibility in London. And having lived in that particular city myself, and now living in another city in the US rather than in Europe, I'm just I don't know. I feel like we could talk about the 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 misfortunes of public transit, getting into places as a wheelchair users. There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like London is both an amazing city, like I love it so much, and like I was born here, it's very much home, but also really difficult to navigate, particularly as a wheelchair user, and to make your way around, to feel comfortable, um, because it is very stressful in many ways. But I also love it, so it's kind of like yeah, the love-hate relationship.
The way I feel that in my depths of my soul. Because I miss London like all the time. It is very much like a second home for me.
Yeah,
Um, and like the public transit there, yes, bad, not
yeah,
accessible. However,
yeah,
it's still better than anything we have going in the
yeah, yeah,
US.
yeah. Yeah, because I feel like in the US they don't have public transport in the same way. Is that right?
So Chicago, that's
Yeah.
what I can speak to the most. Chicago does have public transit. We have trains and we have trains, we have like a metro, like subway
Yeah, yeah,
situation, and then we have buses too.
yeah.
The problem that I experience compared to London is there's just not as many stops.
Okay,
So
interesting.
the amount of accessibility at these like on the public transit stations here, I think is technically a higher percentage. I don't know what's the percentage in London now. Do
It's
you
like
know
one
it?
third of tube stations are accessible.
Okay, I don't want to be wrong. I very well could be wrong in what stat I'm about to share. I think it's 2/3 in Chicago
Okay.
are
Yeah.
wheelchair accessible. With the old mayor, I know the goal was to get 100% wheelchair access by 2030. I don't know if the city's still putting things in place to make that a reality or not, but I do think that percentage is higher, even if it's not exactly 66%. Regardless, though, point being, there are less stops. There are less like places to get on and off the train, get on and off the buses, and because of that, in another way, it's less accessible because you have to walk so far in
Yeah, yeah,
between
yeah.
zones, and then suddenly it's like, oh, well, that's not actually that great then, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel because like in the UK, and you can like correct me if this is wrong, but from what I've like researched and watched online about like the US as a whole, that like in the UK we have trains as well that you can like take to other cities and like you can go all the way up to Scotland. But online people talk about how like there isn't as many trains that are like connecting other cities and states and like it's kind of harder to do that. Is that right? Or because I guess it's so big, isn't it?
It it is right, but it's also wrong. There are
Right.
trains. Like
Yeah.
trains exist. I take the
Yeah.
train home to my hometown like every time I go home pretty much.
Yeah.
Um and like I've gone and visited my friend in Milwaukee, which is in Wisconsin. I have
Mhm.
plans to go visit a friend in St. Paul, Minnesota. And these are all like going to be train trips.
Yeah.
I've also taken a 48-hour train ride
Oh, that is
across the US.
right. Yeah, yeah.
So they exist. They're just not very efficient. They're definitely not accessible.
Mm.
And I think like on the whole, the UK, I mean, get it. I'm trying to think of a UK city. I bet Birmingham.
Yeah.
You can get to London from London to Birmingham almost every hour on the hour.
Yeah, and it's like an hour and 20 or something. It's very quick.
It's so
Yeah.
quick, and that makes it feasible and like possible to live in Birmingham but work in
Yeah,
London.
yeah.
That's not really a reality, I would say, in the US. I know there's a lot of people at my old university who would live in Chicago and teach at the university, and they would take the train, but the train's over 2 hours long. Like,
Wow.
that's not
Yeah.
great, and it's only a 2 hour drive, so
Okay,
at
yeah,
that
yeah.
point
So
it's
it's, yeah.
comparable.
It's like London to Birmingham is like, I want to say 3.5 hours at least. And so it's quicker on the train. The only thing is that the trains are really expensive, so it's cheaper to drive.
Interesting. See,
Because
I
the
never
train,
drove in the UK, so I don't really even
yeah,
know.
it is. I would say it's cheaper to drive than it is to get the train. I mean, it does depend. Like if you got a train ticket really early, like if I was like, I'm going to Birmingham in 4 weeks and I'm going to get a train at this time. But if I didn't know when I was going or whatever, and I was going to book for tomorrow, train tickets could be like £70 per person, whereas like driving would be like 10 maybe. Obviously depends on the car and petrol efficiency and electric and all of that, but yeah, it would be much cheaper. um but yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't, I mean, I didn't take the train very often in London either, but I don't remember the prices being that bad. Is that like new, or has it always been kind of like that?
it's more expensive for like it's long distance trains that are expensive. And I feel like they have always been expensive, but it's got worse. Like that, and it's more like on the last minute stuff. But like I went to was it Coventry? Yeah, I went up. No, it was Leicester. I went up to Leicester, like super last minute. And I was supposed to be driving. Had like a talk there, and I was supposed to drive, but then there was like a big accident, so we couldn't drive. So I got the train. And for me to book one way ticket for two people last minute, it was £155. Yeah, and it was like an hour and a half, 2 hour train. But yeah, I don't know if it's similar price, but they are all accessible. Like the longer form trains, generally to like bigger stations, they are all accessible, and they all have ramps on the train.
Processing that because that's so much money. Like public
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
transit is not supposed to be that expensive. That's the whole point.
Yeah, it's very expensive. It's to do with, sorry, this is really like this is really boring, but basically the Tory government, which is like the right-wing government in the UK, essentially sold off all our rail networks and made them private companies. And then as a result, their like prices have been really high, but a lot of them have been striking as well. So it's yeah. And like some train companies are better than others. It does vary per one. Some of them are cheaper than others, some of them are more expensive. I also think there's probably a third party that's like kind of like the ticket master person of like trains, and like there's definitely going to be like flexi pricing for different times and all of that. So yeah, it does depend on like what time you're going, but I could imagine if I was like, I'm going to go to Milton Keynes tonight at 6 o'clock during rush hour, it would be very expensive,
Wow.
but it
That
would be accessible.
they would, I mean, hey, listen, accessibility is key. We love some access, that's for sure. And I guess I need to clarify when I say that the trains are not accessible here in the US, they are. You can get on in a
Yeah.
wheelchair. You definitely need assistance.
Mhm.
They have like this elevator thing that they do, and it is complicated, but like getting to the dining cart on a train, probably not
Yeah, they
accessible.
can't do that on a train here either.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So unfortunate.
You can go to the toilet though. Woo!
Woo! I think you're sat by the toilet though. I think on
Yeah.
both US and UK
Yeah,
trains.
yeah, literally. You can kind of get in. So on like a UK, I mean, obviously these are all the ones that I've been on, but on like a standard UK long distance train, you can get on with a ramp. So you'd meet assistants and like they'd put you on, and then they put you in the section, assuming that there's no like luggage in the wheelchair section, which does happen quite a lot. But they put you in the wheelchair section, and then you are right by the toilet, and you can't get to the food cart. So you can literally kind of just stay in like your section and then go to the toilet. You can on, I don't know if it's on all trains, but on quite a lot of trains at least, that I've seen, you can like scan like a QR code and order food and then they'll deliver it to your seat. So you can get food. Um, but I don't know, thinking about it, I don't know if it's on all trains. To be honest, I don't ever look at the like food thing because I always buy food before I get on because like the food on the trains is not nice and like um it's expensive. But our trains, I mean, I don't know how long like the average train journey is. Like as you were saying that they take quite a lot longer in the US. Like our trains are fairly quick. Like you can do long ones. Like if you're doing London to Scotland, it would be long, or like London to certain areas in Cornwall, like you're looking at like 5 hours. But like to a lot of our like Midland cities, you're kind of looking at like 1 to 2 hours.
Okay. I mean, I think your trains are faster. I don't know
Yeah.
100%, but I do think they are faster.
Yeah, they are quite fast. And like, yeah, it's I I've seen people like say that because they're so quick, they can kind of make them feel a bit sick as well.
Hey, that's me.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
definitely a me problem. Um, but something this conversation is like leading me to think about are actually two topics that you and I have both talked about online. I know for a fact. One is the fact that due to the way accessibility works with travel in the UK, and in the US, to be fair, the idea of last minute travel is very complicated. It's
Yeah.
often like you're not allowed to do that.
No. Technically, so we have like a thing called turn up and go in the UK, which is where like you turn up and they have to provide assistance, which is all well and good in like theory, but if you turn up and go and like it's an unmanned station, there's nobody there to put you on. So that's like, yeah, kind of irrelevant. So you have to book in advance for like any stations that aren't manned. And then also if you turn up and go and there's like someone else that's getting assistance at the same time or like going into the same spot, that can be really difficult. Um, yeah. One train that I do really like is the Eurostar, which is the one that goes from like London to Paris and all the others, because you get to go in first class as a wheelchair user there, which is really nice. And they give you a discounted ticket as well. So
Love that. Love
yeah,
that so
quite
much.
heavily discounted, I think.
I think you're right because I've taken the Eurostar 3 times,
Yeah,
and two of the times I know for a fact that I paid a lot less than the
yeah,
other
yeah,
people I was traveling with.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is like quite significantly cheaper, which is nice, and it's quite accessible there as well, because when you're in first class, you get like first class lounge and all of that. Um, but yeah, the idea is like you are supposed to be able to kind of turn up, but I think what what's written online is actually very different to like reality of life of hello, I'm here to get on the train. And quite often, even if there's like 10 minutes to go, they'll be like, I'm not sure, I'm gonna have to ring ahead and see if the next station's gonna take you off. And like, yeah, and that's quite common that I just won't get put on a train because the other station hasn't got back or whatever it is. So yeah, it's in principle a nice idea, but in reality, not really.
I have gotten a lot of pushback, I know, in the UK when I've just like shown up before. They're just like,
Yeah,
"What?
they
Why
just
are
don't.
you here?" And I'm like, "You should have booked." And they
Yeah,
like will make you feel bad. I'm just like, "Okay, well, I have a life, and suddenly something came up, and I have to
yeah,
be
yeah.
gone. So
But
what
also,
do you
like,
want?"
everyone else has like the option to miss a train or not know what time they're coming home. Because that's the other thing. Like, I live where I live, there's like five kind of stations in that roughly within walking distance, but not all of them are manned, and they kind of all have like different lines. And like, if I go out to the theatre, let's say, I might not necessarily know what time I'm going to come home because like it might overrun, or like I might want to go for drinks afterwards. Not that that's ever happened, but you know, I want the freedom to like do whatever I want to do. But I don't really have that as an option because I've got to like book it in advance and be like, I'm getting this train. And also sometimes that train is like later because I'm worried about it overrunning or something. And then I'm sitting there having to wait for ages when I could have got an earlier train, but because I've had to book. And like you have to give at least 4 hours notice, but ideally more because sometimes they don't even approve it in that time. So yeah.
And I feel like this is like such a key point in discussions that are important to have on a podcast like this that focuses on rejection and discrimination and all of that, because it is a subtle form of discrimination. I don't even know if it's subtle. I don't really like using the word subtle for that. It's a form of ableism, like straight
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we were very much thought about a second even when they're like updating the railways, like it's very much like disabled people are second in this situation because they don't have like built-in ramps, which we know exist and absolutely can be a thing. And it's kind of like they were like, oh dear, now I've got to sort out these people that use wheelchairs to get on the train. What are we going to do? And then it also doesn't really work, the system that's in place at the moment, because people are forgotten all the time and left on the train and are just like not treated very well by staff as well. Like I've had so many issues that I've run into with staff just being really horrible, and unhelpful, and also like just assuming what I need in a situation. And so yeah, I think it definitely is like ableism, discrimination. It's just proof of how like the world was just not built for us.
It was not built for us, and in so many cases we are thought of secondly. Like it's not like we are a priority in any capacity, and it's frustrating for many reasons. But I think we highlighted another one without really like highlighting it, is this idea of, you either pay the same amount as non-disabled people or sometimes even more for accessibility in many cases.
Yeah.
And oftentimes people are like, oh, well, you get luxury experiences. On the rare case, like sometimes you do, right? Like Eurostar,
And
first class, great, love, 10 of 10. But 98% of the time, you're put next to the toilet, or you have to go in through the garbage room to get to your destination, or like whatever it may be. Go all the way around the building to a separate entrance. Like there's 1,001 different hurdles that we have to like deal with. And again, that's another form of like discrimination. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I think like this idea of like we get luxury experiences is definitely like a narrative that's kind of painted by governments and stuff to like make it easier that they're not really looking after us. But in reality, like my day-to-day life is certainly not a luxury experience. Like you're getting on the same tube as everyone else, the same trains as everyone else, by the toilet. You don't have an option to like sit anywhere else on the train. You've got to be in this one place. And then like the lift might break and then we're stuck, or we might not, like somewhere might say it's accessible and then you get there and it's actually not. And that's like the reality of what we're living in, not like these luxury experience. Like, and also I think people see things like we can skip a queue at like the London Eye or something and they're like, oh, you're so lucky, when in reality like we're actually doing that because otherwise we won't get through the actual experience of doing the London Eye because energy or pain or whatever it is. So yeah, it's like 90% of the time it's like it's not luxuries, it's just necessity. And that's why. And like also a lot of the times that if we ever do, in the very rare like situation that we do get like a luxury experience, a lot of the time it's only happening so that like companies can cover their butts if anything bad happens to us. So yeah, which is what it's like with like carer tickets and stuff, so that in an emergency they can, like, the carer is responsible for getting us out, not the company. It's like, yeah.
I never put that together.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why it's like then like there's somebody else to help and stuff.
You just like
And like make up for lack of access as well, stuff like that, because it's like cheaper for them to give you like a free ticket rather than having a staff member having to like guide you around or help you to the toilet or all those things. Yeah.
Awesome. That makes me really happy.
Literally, yeah. Sorry.
Oh my gosh. No. um wow. I can't believe I never considered that as the reason. Like it's a liability thing. Of course it is.
Yeah,
Everything, everybody's just trying to cover their ass. Really
of
great.
course. Of course. Always, always, always.
Always, always, always. Well, that getting around anywhere is a pain. I always say that like one of my I joke about this, right? I always say one of my vices is taking Ubers in Chicago,
Mhm.
right? I have made videos about it. I say it to my friends and stuff all the time. But like it's not a vice. It's not a vice, it's an accessibility tool. And
Mhm.
I recognize that there's a privilege in being able to afford to take Ubers. I recognize that. But it's also one, as like a female presenting woman in a big city, it's a safety thing, but two,
Mhm.
it's an accessibility thing. And so it's just
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where like being disabled is a lot more expensive than not being disabled. I mean, I'm sure the stats are different in the US, but like in the UK, it's like £1,000 extra per month to be disabled, is what the statistics say. So it's like on top of everything else that every other normal person has to pay for, as if disabled people aren't normal. But you know what I mean? People who are non-disabled have to pay for, we have to pay for £1,000 on top on average.
this is actually something that I have like not talked about on here at all, is the difference in treatment of disabled people in the US versus the UK.
Yeah, interesting.
In the sense of like you have a number. You have like a
Yeah, yeah,
thousand pounds extra a month because there's research that's been done to
yeah,
find that number. There's no research.
yeah, yeah,
People aren't researching that here. We have the ADA. That means signed, sealed, delivered. Problem
yeah, yeah, yeah,
solved.
yeah,
We don't need to worry about the disability problem anymore.
yeah,
It's infuriating to say the least because so often we are just like not considered at all as like a minority group. And so not to get super political, but there is a lot going on in the US right
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah,
I know everybody knows what I'm talking about. I'm
yeah,
not going to even say it. But it's amazing how quickly the disability rights issues are getting lost in the intersectional discourse
mm,
around the situation. And
yeah, yeah.
I just am like, please don't forget about the disability community because we are in every other community too.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing. Like when you're talking about intersectionality, it's like talk about all of it because also if you're oh my God, I can't speak. If you're an intersectional person that falls under like multiple communities within that, then your experience is going to be very different and like you're going to experience multiple forms of discrimination within that. And so, and I do see it a lot, like where people will kind of say various different groups of people, which is really important that we talk about and like we, look at the discrimination against how different people are discriminated against. But then we'll often forget about disabled people, also not thinking that there's disabled people in all of those intersections and they're going to be experiencing discrimination likely on a higher level than someone else. And then there's also intersectionally within those communities and how different people interact with disabled people. And like, for example, like in the LGBTQ plus community, like pride is not often accessible, yet LGBTQ plus people are like discriminated against. And so it's like, that's just an example, but I'm sure that there's various different ways that that happens. And so it's so important that like we're included in the conversation. And really, I think that like disability should be like equal to those conversations. And like when we're talking about one, like if we're talking about LGBT people, we should be thinking about like how can we make this accessible for disabled LGBTQ plus people because they're going to be getting discrimination on top of being disabled and LGBTQ. Or yeah, and it's one of the ones that people do maybe not necessarily forget about, but maybe feel a bit uncomfortable about talking about. Maybe it's that like, they're worried that they might get it wrong. Um, and so they don't talk about it. Or maybe they are just forgetting, I don't know. Or maybe they're thinking it's kind of something that happens to old people and not. Yeah, I don't know.
I think you hit on a key point. I think some of it comes from fear of getting it wrong.
Mm.
I think a bigger chunk of it comes from, and I don't mean this in like a derogatory, like mean way, but like a ignorance, like just
Yep.
lack of awareness around disability in general. Which I mean, I know is a huge reason why both of us do what we do,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like it can be frustrating because I feel like we feel like we're in an echo chamber sometimes. I know we've talked
Yeah.
about that. And another topic I wanted to talk about with you anyway, and I feel like this is a good segue, is the fact that we're not believed online for our
Yeah.
disabilities so often. And like, it's wild to me that people are actually in our comment sections being like, you're faking, like, this
Oh,
is not
people are on
real.
forums. They're everywhere. Oh yeah.
What the hell? What the hell? I
Yeah.
mean, the one that kills me is like, I'm visibly disabled in the sense
I
like,
don't know how you get it at all. Like, what are you doing CGIing your arm?
oh, first of all, who do these people think I am? I mean,
Literally,
I love that they
just
believe in
editor.
my skills, but
I am actually an animator.
it's all fake. It's all
Yeah.
AI. Hate to break it to you. April Fools.
And then when
Like,
you go out, you just what like tuck your leg in. No, 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 I'm not sat on my leg. I promise.
oh my God. It's just like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's ridiculous whether I was visibly disabled or not. People should just believe people's experiences, like to be vulnerable in any sort of public setting. And even in like private settings, but to be vulnerable in any public setting, why would people lie? And like, just because maybe some people have doesn't mean that everybody is. Your default shouldn't be that everyone's a liar.
Yeah. No, and that's what they go to. Like they're always like, oh yeah, but this person did this and like controversial, but I'd rather that like 10 people who were lying got access to the accessibility thing or benefits or whatever it is if one person that wasn't did because like disabled people and like people allegedly faking is not the issue. Like when you look at the statistics, it's just not really happening. Not enough that it's a problem. Like it's really not. And also I feel like a lot of the time when people are quite faking, there's something else going on there, right? Like it's not just somebody that woke up one day and is like, hey, I'm going to pretend to be disabled today. Like that's not what's happening. And so I just don't really care. I'm just like, if someone's faking, I don't care. I care about taxing billionaires. Like, please, like, problem solved.
And
It's
that's
not
the key.
like, it's just not, it's actually not an issue. And like, I care about making more facilities accessible rather than like potentially that somebody might be faking it and causing a problem. Um, so yeah, but people say that I'm faking all the time. They'll like talk about it online. They'll, yeah, gossip about it in various different places. I've had people like zoom in on my legs and be like, your legs are too big to be a wheelchair user. Or like you've got muscles on your legs, so you're clearly using them. Even though like in every post it's very clear that I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. It's not like I'm hiding it. um, and then people will be like, you need to send diagnoses. But then if I sent my diagnosis over, then they'll just say that I faked like the tests or whatever. And like, even though they're not fakeable, or they'll just be like, you paid off the doctor. Like there's always a reason to like not believe. And yeah, like I had somebody have a go at me saying that my wheelchair wasn't prescribed, even though it was, but also people that don't like people who need wheelchairs that don't get them prescribed because it's really hard to get access to them. And like, yeah, I had one person say that they worked for the NHS and that they were going to be accessing my healthcare records to prove that I was faking it. I think yeah, if they did look, they would have been very disappointed because it's all there.
All there.
Yeah, it's all there.
I
So
mean,
yeah,
this is a topic you and I have been discussing since we first met. Like, this has just been, unfortunately, I know how much it's like impacted you, and that is so frustrating. But there's a bigger conversation here, and I think you hit on it. Like, a few people lying and getting benefits is not a concern
yeah,
for pretty much every disabled person I know.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
to speak for the community, but I pretty much would feel confident saying that's not the concern. We're more concerned about our rights and access being taken away. I know Disney got in a lot of hot water.
yeah,
Very recently about taking away accessibility I don't know why I said it like that, accessibility measures in the parks and making it more difficult for disabled people to get around and enjoy the amenities and the rides and all of that because they were worried about people who were not disabled using the services. And I'm like, no, that takes it away from people who are disabled. That's not helpful. That's very unhelpful. Who cares? Who cares?
It's just like, if you want to actually help disabled people, taking away access or being like, oh, these people are faking is never the answer. Like, just put more money into it. And it's not like Disney don't have it.
Disney has so much money. It's
literally.
like they're the billionaires we're talking about. They're the ones.
Tax corporations and like problem solved. Yeah, and it is weird to me, and like that it's an interesting thing because like as a content creator, when you read so many times that people believe that you're faking, like you do question yourself. You're like, oh my god, have I like actually made it all up? And then I kind of step back and I'm like, do you think that multiple doctors would have like diagnosed you with multiple things and like you have multiple symptoms every day and that actually it's just all in your head? But like it does get to you because there's only so many times that you can read like you're faking it before you're like, oh my god, what if I actually am? Like what if it's just all a lie? And I know that there's a lot of other disabled people that feel that way as well, because particularly for me, like, I mean, I have a visible disability now because I'm a wheelchair user, but like looking at me out of a chair or even in the chair, like there's no like super obvious thing that's like, yeah, that's, you know, you have a disability or whatever. So it does, like, I know a lot of other disabled content creators have felt the same way, that they will be like, oh my god, what if I am? And then they're like, but I know I'm not. But there's only so many times you can read it before you start being like, oh my god, like, is it all just a lie? But it would be a really silly lie because you make less money as a disabled content creator than as a non-disabled one. And like you get more hate, you get less money AdSense wise, less ads in. The ads will like try and pay you less money, all of that. You get less opportunity in the media, you get invited to less events because like wheelchair access. But like I do a lot of work around like musical theatre and I never get invited to musical theatre events because they're just never accessible, whereas like other people do all the time. And like film premieres, things like that. And so it would be really silly if I'd like made it all up to make money. like what are you doing? Like you should have done something else there.
I mean, my management company and I talk about this frequently. Is this like it's not just money either. It's also suppression in the algorithm.
Yeah.
I've noticed, especially, I would say honestly, in the last like 2 weeks, I've noticed it even more. I've noticed it even more.
Yeah.
So it's a thing. It's a thing, friends. It doesn't benefit anybody to lie. No.
It would be really silly. I mean, you know, particularly as like a content creator, I mean, I suppose you could argue if somebody has like a GoFundMe, then there's maybe more of a thing. But even then, like, believe GoFundMes, like people are not just setting them up for fun. But like, particularly if you can see someone that's like just working, talking about their experience, like why would somebody invest so much time into like education if they weren't actually disabled? Like, what would be the benefit? Like, what's the reason? There is literally no reason.
There's no reason because it's not monetary and it's not fame because to this day, you get less of it. I mean, I don't know a single high profile disabled celebrity, like visibly disabled, like in any capacity. I'm not saying that there aren't people with, because I mean, I think Selena Gomez obviously has lupus that's very disabling to her. She's the most.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone that's like a wheelchair user that's like super famous. Not like A-lister. There definitely are like some famous wheelchair users that I could name, but like even then, they're still like, they're famous, but they're not like Harry Styles or something.
Right. They're not people that like are household names. I think that's what I would feel.
Like Selena Gomez is probably the only one. I'm sure there's more. Stevie Wonder, actually.
Stevie Wonder also, yes.
And like there's a couple of people who have become disabled after becoming famous as well, because I think that's an interesting like distinction of like, I mean, not that it makes them any less important in the community at all, because anyone can become disabled at any time. But it is interesting to like look at the differences between somebody who maybe wasn't disabled then became disabled in older life or whatever. Whereas I definitely think like it's much harder to like get jobs and fame and opportunities when you're visibly disabled, for sure. And like invisible disabilities as well, because then they're not catered for, they're not given as much support, people don't believe them. Because I've both lived like invisibly disabled and visibly disabled, and like the discrimination, in my opinion, in some ways like intersects, and in other ways is like very different, but it's very much there either way, if that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely makes sense. I mean, I've never lived non-visibly disabled, but I also know that the difference that I experience when I'm using my wheelchair versus using my prosthetic,
Yes. Yeah.
nuts. Actually bananas how differently I'm treated.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Like when I was invisibly disabled, I used to have people like question me for using the accessibility things in like using disabled toilets or like whatever it was. But now I'm a wheelchair user, I'll have people like actually shout at me in the street or like throw things at me or just be like openly vile for like no reason, just because they can be. So it's definitely different. And that doesn't like, I'm not suggesting one's worse than another. It just is different. Whereas like I would never be questioned now for using the disabled toilet, or like I'd never be questioned for like getting a ramp or getting assistance. If I like go into somewhere where there's like assistance to give, I'm like approached straight away, and that there's no question in that at all. So it's definitely like different discrimination. Right, like yeah, it's not necessarily the one's better or worse. It's just different.
No, I completely agree. Also, I'm putting my phone on Do Not Disturb again because it turned off at noon.
No.
There we go. No, I completely agree with that. I think there are differences, and I actually don't think it's talked about very much within the community that
Yeah.
it's okay that there are differences. Like, I think we all pride ourselves on the idea like we all have different experiences with our disability and diagnoses doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And like pain and just overall like experience. But I don't think we necessarily talk about like the discrimination also appears differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that one is worse than the other. I get people that comment that all the time too when I like share about my experience, and they're just like, oh, well, at least you don't have this, or oh, well, why didn't you talk about this? And why didn't you like, I'm like, because that's not my experience.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
my page. I'm talking about my experience. Like I recognize that these other ones exist, but that's if you want that, go find a different creator. I'm happy to point you in the right direction.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
it's interesting, and like again, it's one of those things, isn't it, where like intersectionality plays into it. Like I'm a white person, I present as like feminine, and so I'm gonna have probably more issues from like men, for example. But I'm white, and like predominantly I'm white first, and so a black wheelchair user is very likely to have different discrimination, potentially more discrimination, like all of those things, because obviously racism plays into that. So it's like, I think it's an interesting thing, like when we talk about it, because it's everyone's experience is going to be different. And I can imagine like if you live in different areas, like in areas that maybe are a bit more tolerant than others or whatever, then it's going to be different. And so yeah, it's interesting. And I think I was thinking about doing a video, is this whether or not I have the ability to do it, of like the difference between like going out in my wheelchair versus like with a walking stick, and how I'm like people interact with me differently, because that's definitely a thing. Like people automatically assume like when they see a walking stick, they're like, oh, you've hurt yourself, rather than like you have a permanent lifelong disability. That yeah is, they're kind of like, oh, what happened to you? And so it's definitely like a different interaction, and like people, yeah, just navigate you differently, I think.
That they do. That they do. I think I'm glad you brought up privilege, because I am also a white person, and a white woman at that. You know, I've heard that men in the disability community experience vastly different levels of discrimination than women do. and different kinds too, which is also interesting. And yeah, there's just so much intersectional discrepancies, I think, between all of our experiences, and that's a tribute to our backgrounds and us all being unique individuals who have important lived experiences and stories to tell. And that's why I always encourage people to speak up and share their stories. The more stories that are shared, the more people feel represented, the more people feel heard, and the more changes that get made. But you know, we talked about a lot of really heavy topics on this podcast, and before I like wrap things up and ask you my 4 hard-hitting questions that I ask all of my guests, I did just want to like ask, because the premise of this is to help people feel more confident living their best life and going out despite all of the shit essentially that's out there. So when you come across ableism, which as we've discussed is frequently, but what's something that you can like lean on to keep showing up online and keep going outside and keep putting yourself into positions where it's going to happen again and again?
Yeah, I think my partner definitely plays a big part in that, and like feeling supported at home. Therapy, which I'm very lucky to be able to afford to have, helps a lot. And also just like, I guess the end goal, I think, of like, you know, I kind of want this to be better, and I hope that I'm helping in a small way. Sometimes I don't think I am, and other times I'm like, oh, maybe I am. So that kind of changes from, day to day. But just, I think trying, hoping in the long run that it will make a difference.
Well, I, for one, think that you are making a difference. Just not, and I'm not just saying that as your friend, I'm saying that as a consumer of your content and somebody who has watched you do so much education work over the last 5 years, you said. So I too have been doing this for, I think mine's 4.5. That's makes me a little ill to think about, to be honest with you.
It flies by. It's ridiculous, but
love it. We're very similar at age too, and I'm just like 30's approaching. It's
I
coming.
know it's coming. It is coming. It is coming.
Fine, we're fine. Everything's okay. Age is just a number.
Aging is a privilege. That kind of helps for me to put it into like,
I love that phrase. I lean on that phrase. It is a privilege. It is a privilege 100%. And we're both very lucky individuals in many ways, but also we've seen some shit. We have seen some shit.
It's a fun time.
It's a great time. Eliza, this has been such a fun conversation. Maybe fun's not the right word, but it's definitely been an important one. And I think a lot of my listeners, whether they're disabled or non-disabled, I hope will either relate or maybe feel more empathy and understanding and have some awareness around the situations. So thank you for being so vulnerable with me today.
No worries, anytime.
Do you mind if I ask you my 4 hard-hitting questions?
Of course.
All right, let's dive
They're
in.
hard.
They're not hard, I promise. Okay. I hope not. If they are, let me know. I'd love the feedback. Right. I know that you're a big music person, just like me. So this is one of my favorite questions to ask people. But when you've faced a moment of discrimination or rejection and you're feeling a little low, what's a song that you can put on that will maybe not fix the problem, but it will definitely boost your mood just like a little bit?
Oh, good question. Anything Harry Styles, because I'm like a big Harry Styles fan. Anything like from Six, the musical, a big Six fan. Yeah, probably Treat People with Kindness from Harry Styles, I would say. Because that's what I did my wedding dance to. And I feel like it's like a song that holds, a place in my heart.
Okay, well, I love that. I'm gonna make a playlist of all the songs people say. So definitely yes, I'm excited to add that one. I love Harry. You know I love Harry. We've been to see Harry Styles together.
Yeah, always.
And Taylor. Oh my God.
I know. Yeah. Two good experiences in the same place.
in the same place. Love Wembley for that. Wembley, it's pretty accessible. It's not like the best
It's all
accessibility.
right once you got the tickets.
Once you got the ticket. Yeah.
To be fair, I got you both lots, so
I really appreciate you for that. I do. Eliza, you are my concert buddy in the UK, and I appreciate
yeah,
it.
anytime. I got
Um,
4 lots of Sabrina tickets, so
did you?
I
Look
know.
at you.
Not
That's
just
such
all for me, for other people, but yeah, I just took 2 for myself.
Listen, I'm impressed because you have like the secret sauce to like
Yeah,
make
I
it
know. I'm
happen.
not giving it away.
I'm not asking. Because quite frankly,
I really don't. Nothing particular. I'm just lucky, I think.
I mean, it's a phone number thing, isn't it? Like for Wembley in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and like online stuff, it's just like making sure that like you're logged in and
Mhm.
like you've got all your information logged in, and also like even if after like 10 minutes or whatever they're not coming up, like with Sabrina, I booked 2 and then I checked again, like, and they were all sold out, and then like 5 hours later there were like loads available, so like even checking as time goes on, stuff like that.
There you go. You heard it here first, friends.
There you
There
go.
are ways to get the tickets. We can beat
Luck.
Ticketmaster.
Yeah. Mainly just luck, but yeah.
Okay, question number 2.
Yeah.
What is something that is in your rejection rescue kit? So when you're facing like a low moment, something that you do or something that you have that you use that again boosts your mood.
My dogs, Pod and Pam,
The cutest.
they always, yeah, kind of will snuggle up if I'm struggling with something, and they're always there and they're always very joyful.
Pets are the best. I want a dog so bad. We've talked about my dog. I
Yeah.
miss my dog all the time. It's fine. It's not, but it's fine. But I totally get that and love that you have them both. They're such good dogs.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky.
They're so good. Okay, question number 3. What was the last thing you did scared?
Oh my God, don't ask me that question. I've got OCD. Exists? Uh, to be honest, I do kind of spend my whole life scared because I have like an anxiety disorder and like my OCD is quite bad. I don't talk about it that much online, but like I've got very unwell with it in the past, like, and so I have therapy and everything now. But I spend a lot of time like nervous. Like I've just joined like a swimming pool. Going to like the pool causes me quite a lot of anxiety, but also I enjoy doing it at the same time. I went to the theatre last week and was very anxious the whole time. But yeah, I would say I do like a good like 70% of life where, unless I'm like at home or in the office, I would say I'm scared. But I also might be scared there too, just because that's living with OCD. But probably, yeah, I think maybe because I'm always scared. Like I don't get scared about normal things that people get scared about. Like I'm not scared about like speaking in front of people or doing a performance or something. I'm just like scared about existing in the world.
Listen, I think that's a super like valuable answer because I think a lot of people relate to that. I know I do. Like I have
Yeah.
anxiety myself, so I do a lot scared as well. It's
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, just kind of like forcing through that. And like I'm going through a treatment at the moment of like exposure therapy and like doing things that are quite scary and stressful, but I know in the long run it will make me better. And like it's tough. It is hard to do, but it is helpful. Yeah. Obviously it's make sure that if you're doing that you have like guidance from a therapist and all of that. But yeah, it doing it scared is kind of just what my life is. Sorry, that's a really sad answer, but yeah.
It's not a sad answer, it's a real answer, and I value authenticity here on Access Denied, which leads me to my final question for you today. What is a final piece of advice, or what I like to call a nugget of wisdom, that you would like to leave with the listeners?
Oh, existing as a disabled person is an act of rebellion.
Oh, that's it. That's the nugget. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
I don't actually know where I heard that or if I made it up. I don't know. If somebody knows, let me know. But It probably was made by somebody much cleverer than me. But
Tearing up. That's beautiful. I love that.
but yeah, I remember thinking about that. I don't know. I feel like it's been like mulling over in my brain. But yeah, if anyone knows who actually came up with that, let me know.
That is, wow. Goosebumps. Thank you so much for being here, Eliza. It has been such a joy having you on my podcast today. How can everybody find you?
Yeah, so my handles are at Disabled Eliza across all of them, or Eliza Rain. I think if you type that in, it will probably come up. And I'm across most of them: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, LinkedIn, somewhere. Yeah.
I will go ahead and link all of that below in the show notes, friends. Y'all, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Access Denied. Eliza, thank you for being here. And y'all, I will see y'all next week. Thank you so much. Bye. And that concludes another episode of Access Denied. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you like this week's episode, be sure to hit that subscription button and notification bell here on YouTube, or go check us out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss another episode. We have so much exciting content coming out for season 2. You're not going to want to miss it. I'd like to give a huge shout out to JP Warner Sound for dropping this sick beat that you're listening to right now. And finally, if you'd like to rep your love of Access Denied, you now can with our very exciting merch line, featuring a very special Access Denied mug so that you can sip your morning tea while you listen to me spill the accessibility. Anyways, friends, thank you so much once again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye!